This is the town of St. Thomas, Nevada, or Nevada, as they say here. Around the turn of the century, St. Thomas was a bustling agricultural town. It was a farming town, and people lived here. This was actually the school, the elementary school, where the kids went every day. Every day, kids would run down these stairs to go home and play with their toys, or probably do chores. It is a farming community. Also, it's raining here today, so hat. But by 1940, this entire town was under 60 feet of water because about 10 miles that way is Hoover Dam. And this was once Lake Mead. Now, as we all know, Lake Mead has retracted quite a bit over the years, and they're going through something of a mega drought right now. So sometime in the 1990s, St. Thomas was out of the water again. And what's left here is mostly just a bunch of foundations, but this was basically about 50 years underwater. And the fact of the matter is, St. Thomas is just one of dozens, hundreds even, of sunken towns and villages all around the world that were created because of reservoirs being built. Sometimes a levee broke, sometimes it was a catastrophe, sometimes they got their land bought out from them, but they're all over the place. And most of them are actually still underwater. So today we're going to look at the history and some of the coolest and most interesting sunken towns in the world. There's a great quote from the movie Inherit the Wind where the character Henry Drummond says, quote, "Progress has never been a bargain. You have to pay for it. Progress isn't free." It's from Team America, that whole thing, yeah. For most of us, progress is this inevitable, unyielding force that moves at breakneck speed, and you're just trying to keep up with it, basically. I mean, just look at all the AI news lately. We also generally believe that progress is a good thing. And on the whole, it is. I mean, we like to complain about the modern world a lot, but if you think about it, we live lives of luxury that the richest kings 500 years ago couldn't have even imagined. But all that progress has externalities and unintended consequences. Like, take the interstate highway system here in the US. Yes, it made cross-country travel a lot easier and faster, and it was actually funded as a national defense measure in the 1950s. But it also killed a lot of small towns. You know, small towns that you used to have to drive through on small, farm-to-market roads and whatnot. Maybe stop and get a sandwich or patronize a business, and now you just bypass completely. I kind of grew up in one of those towns. But a lot of small towns had it way worse. Earlier in the 20th century, there was a kind of a massive leap in progress that led to a lot of towns going underwater. And I don't mean that financially, I mean literally underwater. North America is covered with artificial lakes. Those lake bottoms used to be ground that had a long history. Maybe people used to travel there, maybe people farmed there, maybe people lived there. Maybe a lot of people lived there. It's a really weird thought when you realize that for a lot of lakes, there are towns at the bottom of them. Think about that the next time you're on a jet ski. So how did this happen? Well, in the early 20th century, there was a mass migration of people from rural to urban areas as industrialization led to new jobs and higher wages in the cities. Between 1900 and 1920, the percentage of the population that lived in cities went from 30% to 50%. All those new people needed clean water, and all those factories needed power. So what followed was an explosion of new artificial lakes and reservoirs and hydropower stations all over the country. For example, here in Dallas, the population doubled from 1910 to 1920, so the city bought land around White Rock Creek to build a reservoir. The dam was finished in 1914, and it began to fill up with water, creating what is today White Rock Lake. All of this used to be farmland. Today it's the largest urban park in the country. It's twice the size of Central Park. No towns at the bottom of it, though. The same can't be said for many lakes in Tennessee. Starting in the 1930s, the Tennessee Valley Authority was created to build dams and power stations along the Tennessee River. And while, yes, it provided power and improved the economy and modernized the entire region, it also displaced 125,000 people and destroyed several towns. It also saved George Clooney at the end of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Another standout area was New York State, where the Catskill Aqueduct was built between 1917 and 1924. It created 6 reservoirs to provide water for New York City, but this required drowning 25 communities. If that sounds bittersweet, that's ironic because one of the towns was actually called Bittersweet. Even more ironic, one of the towns was called Neversink. Now, to be clear, these communities weren't just drowned with no warning or recompense. They were acquired by eminent domain and people were paid for their land, but still. So sometimes towns are lost to progress. It happens a lot. And sometimes nature decides it needs to slap a bitch. That's exactly what happened to Port Royal, Jamaica. Port Royal has a crazy history, actually. It was an important hub for transatlantic trade, everything from sugarcane to rum, textiles, cotton, and, of course, slaves. By the late 1600s, it was one of the largest European cities in the New World, second only to Boston. But it was also riddled with pirates. Yeah, like the whole Pirates of the Caribbean thing, this is where all those pirates hung out. And with them came all the booze and prostitutes and debauchery one would expect. It was once called, quote, the most wicked and sinful city in the world. A title that now belongs to, of course, Provo, Utah. It was so associated with pirates that the famous pirate Captain Henry Morgan became the city's lieutenant governor in 1675. Yeah, that Captain Morgan. But the party was short-lived, because on the morning of June 7, 1692, a massive 7.5 magnitude earthquake hit the island. Port Royal was largely built over sand, which experienced instant liquefaction. Buildings, roads, and people were literally swallowed up by the ground. Geysers erupted, structures collapsed, and then a tsunami hit the city that basically washed anything that hadn't already been destroyed out to sea. By the time it ended, around 33 acres of the city had just disappeared underwater. 4 of the 5 forts were demolished, and 2,000 people were killed. One detail that I ran across that's pretty gruesome is that apparently all that liquefaction in the ground caused the bodies in the cemetery to come to the surface, and then the tsunami washed those out to sea to mingle with all the newly dead. Port Royal still exists today, but most of the original city is under 12 meters of water. One of the more interesting sunken towns is the ancient city of Shī Chéng in China. Shī Chéng means lion city in Chinese because the city is populated by dozens of lion statues. And this place is old. It was founded in 621 AD during the Tang Dynasty and actually became kind of a major administrative hub in the Shī Chéng province. But in 1959, as China began modernizing their infrastructure, a hydroelectric dam was built, creating the Chandao Lake. Chandao Lake grew to cover 573 square kilometers, leaving many of the hilltops above water, and which actually created thousands of islands. It's actually a pretty neat landscape. But in the process, it displaced more than 300,000 people and flooded several towns and communities, much like the Tennessee Valley Authority, but way bigger. Which begs the question, is there a Chinese remake of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Because I want to see that. Shī Chéng was a prominent and ancient city, and now it's gone, and that's sad. But there is a silver lining, because it was flooded before the area industrialized, so it actually kind of is frozen in time. It's preserved in water, much the way it was 1,000 years ago. You just need scuba gear to see it. In fact, some have taken to calling it the Chinese Atlantis. In that same general hemisphere of the world is Kalyazin, Russia. This is another town that was drowned by a man-made lake with a slight difference that we'll get to here in a second. Kalyazin was settled on the high bank of the Volga River and was separated in two by another small river called the Zhabna. The town's population grew over the years, eventually supporting a couple of churches, the Monastery of St. Nicholas or the Nikolsky Cathedral on one bank, and the Trinity Kalyazin Monastery on the other bank. But in the 1920s, say it with me, several hydropower plants were built, one of which created the Uglik Reservoir, which drowned half the town. And just like that, all those houses and gardens and streets, storefronts, all that stuff went to a watery grave. Except for one thing, the bell tower of the Nikolsky Cathedral. It was just tall enough so that half of the bell tower remained above water, creating a really interesting view. Later on, this tower would be used as a navigation point and a lighthouse, and I think I read that they still do services there sometimes. Makes the baptisms pretty easy, I guess. By the way, it's not the only submerged tower in the world. There's a whole page on Atlas Obscura of submerged towers around the world, including in Italy, Spain, and Venezuela. But perhaps the oldest underwater city is Pavlopetri, Greece. Now you might be thinking, hold on a second, that Chinese city was built in 620 AD. Surely this isn't older than that. Well, it is older than that.
And don't call me Shirley.
Pavlopetri was completely lost to time until it was discovered on the Peloponnese Peninsula in 1967, and it was mapped the following year. And it's believed to have been inhabited as far back as 3000 BCE. That's like 5,000 years ago. This was a Bronze Age city, and some researchers consider it Neolithic in origin based on some of the items that they found there. Nobody knows for sure what happened to this city to make it slip into the drink, but theories include earthquakes, rising sea levels, erosion, and a tsunami. And of course, the Tennessee Valley Authority. Using digital technology, archaeologists discovered buildings, courtyards, streets, tombs, and religious structures, many of which suggest they were Mycenaean society. As Elias Spondylis, the head of Greece's underwater antiquities department, said, quote, "It is significant because as a submerged site, it was never reoccupied. As such, it represents a frozen moment of the past." So yeah, kind of like Shī Chéng, the fact that this town was submerged actually preserved it and offers a unique glimpse into the past of this once important city. Or maybe it was the Port Royal of its day, who knows. By the way, this city predates Plato's story about Atlantis. Just saying. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list. There are hundreds of sunken towns and communities around the world. And yeah, as bigger and bigger dams start to be constructed, more and more towns will continue to disappear. I mean, the Three Gorges Dam in China drowned 13 cities, 140 towns, 1,300 villages, and displaced up to 1.3 million people. But it also generates around 100 terawatts per year without using any fossil fuels, so its merits are hotly debated. The point is, as we continue to decarbonize our electrical grids into the future, we might be seeing more of these dams being built, sacrificing even more towns and villages. Plus, as more people move into the cities, those cities will need more water, spurring more reservoirs that drown more towns. And then those people will move into the cities, which will need more water. It's a vicious cycle. Add on top of that rising sea levels and more extreme weather events due to climate change, and we might be entering a new golden age of sunken towns. If golden age is the right word. No, that's very vague and unspecific, but there is one very specific weather event that researchers are keeping an eye on, one that might spell doom for a lot of towns in California. Okay, so take a look at this picture. This is K Street in Sacramento in early 1862. That year, California was hit with a massive flood that came to be known as the Great Flood of 1862. It started as a snowstorm in the Sierras that turned into the biggest flood in modern U.S. history. California saw 1/3 of all property destroyed, 800,000 cattle drowned, and 4,000 people died. Towns in the Sierras were the first hit as the rivers overflowed their banks, and as the flood traveled into the valley, several towns disappeared overnight, with entire communities drowned almost instantly. After several weeks of rain, Sacramento to the San Joaquin Valley were completely underwater. That's 483 kilometers by 32 kilometers wide, flooded up to 9 meters deep. All this water affected places as far away as Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, New Mexico, even Utah and Idaho. All places that right now are dealing with a mega drought. Turns out they also get mega floods. And fairly often. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, mega floods hit California about once every 200 years on average. And the last one was in 1862. Who's doing the math? Sedimentary analysis suggests that this pattern is repeated for at least 2,000 years, and these are corroborated by Native American legends in the area. Of course, this didn't happen every 200 years. Some periods were longer than others, so maybe the real takeaway here is that it could happen anytime. Maybe I shouldn't smile when I say that. So as we were writing this episode, California's been dealing with massive flooding and insane snowstorms that have affected up to 15 million people and actually caused a handful of deaths. It's being blamed on atmospheric rivers, which is an awesome term. And this is exactly what it sounds like, a massive flow of moisture in the atmosphere that condenses and falls as rain. As this graphic shows, the Earth has a kind of belt of warm equatorial air masses that are saturated with water vapor from the warm ocean below. This belt is always traveling toward the east from our perspective, thanks to the Earth's rotation. This is called the Coriolis effect. But from time to time, this swirling mass of air can fling a little piece of itself off to the north or south, creating these long tendril structures filled with water. That's the atmospheric river, and when it hits the land and cools, it condenses and falls to the ground as floods. The ones that hit California tend to break off and come from the direction of Hawaii, so they're actually called a pineapple express. That sounds like a joke, but it's not. That's what they call it. But from time to time, all this chaos will line up just right and fling a particularly massive chunk of itself toward California, and that's how you get these mega floods. But the biggest of these mega floods was in 1605. Historical evidence suggests that the 1605 flood was at least 50% bigger than any of the other mega floods, including the 1862 one. It's thought that this flood basically just made a lake out of the Sacramento and San Joaquin valleys that lasted more than a decade. This is the doomsday scenario that keeps climate scientists up at night. It's not a massive earthquake that could knock California into the sea. It's this. This is a storm that has actually happened before, and variations of it have happened regularly for at least 2,000 years. It is almost certain that this is going to happen again. And the U.S. Geological Survey already has a name for this storm. They call it ARkStorm. AR stands for atmospheric river, and the K stands for 1,000 because the storm could bring 1 in 1,000 year floods to some places. It's believed that this future flood could cause up to $1 trillion in damage with a death toll in the tens of thousands. The scenario includes overwhelming flooding in the Central Valley, Orange County, Los Angeles County, San Diego, the San Francisco Bay Area, and other coastal communities. Wind speeds in some places could reach up to 201 kilometers per hour, and hundreds of landslides could damage roads, highways, and homes. Major metro areas like Los Angeles, Sacramento, and San Diego could find themselves partly or completely underwater. It's not total doom and gloom, though. There are some things that we can do to prepare for it. A recent study published in Science Advances in 2022 talked about some of the options. As Daniel Swan, one of the researchers involved in this study, told CNN, quote, "I think the extent of megaflood losses can be significantly reduced by doing certain sorts of things to revamp our flood management and our water management systems and our disaster preparedness." That same study also pointed out that Yes, I know we're all tired of hearing about this, but yes, climate change does play a part in this. Warmer temperatures means warmer waters, means more water vapor in the equatorial belt, which creates larger atmospheric rivers. By the way, this doesn't just happen in California. These atmospheric rivers occur all around the world. So yeah, between the needs of modern life and the effects of modern life, we may be losing a lot of towns and communities in the coming years, which is sad. But going back to St. Thomas, the town that I visited at the beginning of this video, apparently the last person to leave the town was a guy named Hugh Lord, who literally waited until his home was halfway underwater before putting all of his stuff in a canoe and rowing away from his house. And every one of these towns have a story like that, I'm sure. People don't want to leave their homes. People don't want to have to change. So maybe the lesson in all this is that we're going to have to be more flexible in the future. Be more willing to adapt. That's what got us this far. One thing you can easily change is your shaving habits, like getting rid of those plastic cartridge blades for a precision safety razor from Henson Shaving. Okay, look at this. You see what they did here? Look at this. They performed an experiment just to prove that their razors are better on the skin than the cartridge ones. So you've heard me talk about Henson. They're cheaper, they're cooler, they're more sustainable, yada yada. That's all great, but the best part is they're nerds. Their design was based on the idea that if you fully support a blade all the way across, you could cut down on chatter, which is the blade skipping across the surface of the skin. And because they work with aerospace-grade equipment, they can make the design incredibly precise. So they did, and they've been getting rave reviews for it, but that was not enough. They teamed up with a company called Mimosa Diagnostics to use their special thermal camera to measure the differences in blood flow to the skin after using their razor and a leading cartridge blade. The more damage is caused to the skin, the more blood flow. That same damage leads to razor burn, which the medical term is erythema. And they did this with multiple people, and you can see how it's redder on some people's faces than others. It's redder with the cartridge razors than with the Henson razors. And they determined that, quote, statistically significant improvement in post-shave arrhythmia was observed when using the Henson razor. And you can see it right there in those photos. It's crazy. I mean, just the fact that these guys went to this much effort to check their own work is enough reason to give them a shot. This is really cool. So, it's better. It saves you money over time, it's less plastic, and it's even better for your face. So head over to hensonshaving.com and give one a try. Grab a box of 100 blades while you're at it, and enter the code JoeScott at checkout, and you'll get those blades for free. You literally won't spend another dime on shaving for like a year at least. It helps support this channel, helps support an awesome company, and you'll get a better shave. I mean, what more do you need? Hensonshaving.com, links down below. All right, today's the day, everybody. This is the big reveal of the champion of the Sketch Madness tournament. I want to thank everybody who voted in this. This was a lot more fun than I expected, but we all kind of know what the answer is to this. Like, I've been doing blind reveals of this whole time, but I think we all know the answer. But the final matchup was the big million subscriber clone sketch, and the one where I had Earth and Venus in family therapy. There was one person whose name I have not gotten the approval to reveal just yet. There was one person that got them all right and wins the grand prize. We're going to be doing some live events at some point in the coming year, and this person will get to have a VIP access to it. So congratulations. 3 people got 14 right, 8 people got 13 right, and on down. You can see it on screen. But the big reveal, the champion, is... It's the clone sketch, of course, with 60 to 40%. That was actually a little closer than I thought it'd be. Yeah, I did not get very many right in the brackets, but I did suspect that this one was going to win. So I'll pat myself on the back for that one just a little bit. But I don't know. This tells me you guys want some more clone sketches. That's the lesson that I took from this. So it might happen again soon. And so, yeah, I mentioned a minute ago that there was one person who got all of the questions right. That is our grand prize winner. I didn't know how many people would do it, but it was just one. And that person was Olivia Corey. So congratulations, Olivia. We do have some live events that we're working on. And when we get those going, we'll let you know. And you're going to have some VIP access to it, along with all the other prizes that everybody else gets to get. For those who won the lower tier prizes, which there were quite a bit of you, we'll be emailing you and taking care of that as well in the next, hopefully, couple of weeks. But again, this was a lot of fun. I do really appreciate all of you who voted, all of the people who were able to get some prizes from this, and there's actually quite a few of you. You'll be getting emails from us soon because we got your emails in the setup for this. That's how we get to deliver those prizes to you. So again, I want to thank everybody for participating in it. This was a lot of fun for me. Maybe we can do another one again at some point. But there you go. Thanks a lot, everybody. All right, last but not least, big thanks to the Patreon supporters who are supporting this channel directly and forming an awesome community. I cannot thank you guys enough for everything that you're doing. And there's so much wholesomeness going on in the Discord. If you're in Patreon and you're not in Discord, get in the Discord. There's so much cool stuff going on there. But I got some cool people. I got a shout out real quick. We got S. Green, Spencer Six, Nolene, Anthony Bruce, Casey Keeter, who is my cousin, by the way, Rudy Fleming, Becca, Austin, Richard Weaver, Syrupy, and April. Thank you guys so much. And if you would like to join them, which I invite you to do, just go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe and just join the party, man. There's some cool stuff going on. Please do like and share this video if you liked it. And if this is your first time here, maybe click whatever link is on the screen and go check that video out, or look at any of them that maybe YouTube might send your way. Have my little face in the thumbnails. And if you like it, I do invite you to subscribe. I come back with videos every Monday. All right, gang, that's it for now. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week. Stay safe, and I'll see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care. Gonna head back now, and I think my ass is a little wet. Yep.